Chapter 1247, The Anxious Pajigson. Everything at home has been upgraded, both weapons and people. Today's shelter is impenetrable, and it is even possible to say without exaggeration that it is strong enough to withstand a region that does not use the Reaper of Love. In the breeding farm, under the careful care of Zhou, colorful earth centipedes have finally begun to hatch. The frog also put on its white coat for the rare occasion and began carefully farming the worms. He really loved this job, and he was a worm lover himself. The best part was that these worms could also be eaten, which was a blessing. He could normally only roll around in the mud underground in Lujiang, but now he had finally found something he liked to do and was good at, so he was especially attentive. One after the other, the first batch of yuan ore was also transported from Xinjiang. Zhang Yi used dimensional space to send 7% to Blizzard City as agreed, 5% to Deng's technology, and the rest back with him to feed the Earth Centipede and refine the yuan substance. Finally, when everything was ready, he decided to go to the snowy plateau. During this time, Pajigson made more than 10 video calls to him. He earnestly implored him to go to the snowy plateau and attend the Dharma assembly. Otherwise, he would only be able to take his trusted followers with him and flee from the snowy plateau to seek asylum in other regions. According to Pajigson, as the Dharma assembly drew near, the Yaxilangtai family began to intensify their oppression of the other three families. The patriarch of the Yaxilangtai family, the chief monk of Sangha Temple, who held supreme political and religious power in the snowy plateau, Yaxilangtai Deji, told them almost bluntly that there were only two options. Either they chose to submit to the Yaxilangtai family and surrender all the land and private soldiers in their hands. Or else, they can wait to be wiped out by the Yaxilangtai family. The Undertaker comes from the Yaxilangtai family. Although he is kind-hearted and would not kill innocent people, as long as he is around, no one would dare to take action against the Yaxilangtai family. The other families would only be on the receiving end. It would not take long before their family name would be removed from the snowy plateau. The four great families are different from other forces. Their history of existence on the snowy plateau is too long, and their influence in the civilian, political, and religious spheres is enormous. Therefore, the Yaxilangtai family will not allow them to continue to exist. Once war breaks out, they will definitely eliminate them all to prevent them from rising again. Therefore, every time Pajigson and Zhang Yi spoke on the phone, Zhang Yi's attitude became more and more anxious, and he even made somewhat humble pleas. Zhang Yi took the opportunity to ask for 2 more original image files of the King Geezer from him. The more he looked at them, the more shocked he was, because what was described in them was simply appalling. Some of the stories revealed in it from ancient times were too bizarre and unbelievable. However, it now seems that it was not a myth, but rather the historical truth that had been deliberately concealed. It's about time to go over there. Zhang Yi found Xin Shin. When he encountered something important, he often liked to make decisions with Xin Shin. One person's ideas will be limited, but 2 people's blind spots in their vision will be much smaller. Zhang Yi said to Xin Shin, the Paji family is in possession of the secrets of ancient history. If we can obtain the complete version of the King Geezer legend, we will have the opportunity to peer into the secrets of those mysterious underground ethnic groups through the Demon Kingdom at the foot of the Great Snow Mountain. So this time, the Dharma assembly, I think I can go for a visit. If that doesn't, Zhang Yi was prepared for the worst. He was determined to obtain the King Geezer biography, and if he could obtain it in a reasonable way, naturally there would be no problem. But if the trouble was too great and he couldn't afford it, he would do it even if he had to be the villain and take it by force. Xin Shin, however, said, the Pajis seem to be cornered into letting us go. They will have to defend themselves against us, as they are forced to do. However, I believe that both the main text of the King Geezer saga and the secrets beneath the Great Snow Mountain are of high enough value. She looked at Zhang Yi and asked, Brother, do you think that if you encounter the Hades gatekeeper in the Misty Valley Abyss or the white-robed boy beneath the Qinling Mountains right now, what would your chances of victory be? Zhang Yi was silent for a full 20 seconds. Finally, he said with a depressed look on his face, "If I run with all my might, they won't be able to catch me 100%. There might be a chance to escape, maybe." Neither the Hades gatekeeper in black armor nor the white dragon with the body of a human and the head of a snake used their full strength when they attacked them. It seemed that they were restricted in some way and unable to leave their own area. Therefore, Zhang Yi and the other humans were able to escape. Otherwise, with the opponent's strength, Zhang Yi and the others would not have been able to contend with them at all. Xin Shin said, "In that case, sometimes it's useless to just retreat. If a crisis is going to come sooner or later, the best way to deal with it is to keep getting stronger." Zhang Yi hugged his arms around his chest and leaned against the wall, thinking about the experiences he had gone through time and time again. At the crossroads of life, every choice is particularly important. Make a mistake, and you could ruin your whole life. Zhang Yi gave a faint smile. "You're right. Judging from the current situation, the snowy plateau should be the most suitable place for me to go. After all, even if the forces of the demon kingdom still exist underground. But a tribe that was suppressed by human heroes more than 2,000 years ago, how powerful can they be?" Zhang Yi comforted himself like this, sighing lightly in his heart, "I hope that after the end of the world, they have not appeared overly powerful individuals. Or I can go and research why there are superhumanly powerful beings among the mysterious underground tribe." Zhang Yi and Xin Shin discussed the matter at length. This time, when they went to the snowy plateau, they would once again take the whole family with them, leaving Frog at home to take care of the farm. If anything really did happen, they wouldn't be gone for long. However, only a few fighters would show up, while the others would hide in the shadows and not show themselves easily. And this time, they would need to conceal their identities. Only by hiding themselves in the darkness and observing their opponents in the sunlight could they gain the upper hand. Pa Jigsaw had no reason to disclose information about Zhang Yi and the others. Then, when the time came, Zhang Yi suddenly revealed his strength, catching the other families off guard. After all, Zhang Yi was not sure just how strong the divinely endowed Epsilon of the snowy plateau really was. According to Pa Jigsaw, he is like a god on the snowy plateau, and can easily sweep aside any opponent with one move. After the discussion, Zhang Yi summoned his personal intelligence system and asked it to contact Pa Jigsaw. Chapter 1248, Snowy Plateau. At this time, Pa Jigsaw was worried all day long. After the end of the world, a blizzard had fallen, making transportation to and from the entire snowy plateau extremely difficult. During his last trip to Xinjing, he took the opportunity to transfer some of his assets, but in order not to arouse the suspicions of other families, and because he still had a little bit of hope, most of his property and private army remained in the snowy region. However, this approach would of course be discovered. Now, with the approach of the Dharma Assembly, the pressure from the Yashi Langtai family on their Pa Ji family has become even stronger. If it weren't for the solemnity of the Dharma Assembly and the reverence he felt for Tantra, Pa Jigsaw even felt that the Yashi Langtai family would strike at any time. But even if it wasn't now, it was only a matter of time. He could either ask for outside help, escape, or just wait to die. Surrender was out of the question. The Yashi Langtai family would not allow Pa Jigsaw, who had such a strong influence in the snowy region, to live. Just as he was getting annoyed, Zhang Yi's communication came through. Pa Jigsaw saw this and immediately gave orders to his loyal bodyguard Solangi, "Remove everyone." The strong man, who looked like an iron tower, nodded and then waved his hand, immediately sending the maids in the luxurious room out, and then summoning heavily armed personal soldiers to guard every corner. Pa Jigsaw then connected. Zhang Yi was impatient, and Pa Jigsaw said with a flattering smile, "I'm sorry, Lord Chaos. This is really an important call with you, and I had to clear everyone out." Zhang Yi said indifferently, "I understand. You're right to be cautious. Let me ask you, how many people under your command know that you have contacted me?" Pa Jigsaw suppressed the smile on his face and said seriously, "After leaving Xinjing, every contact I had with you was very secret, and I didn't tell anyone. As for in Xinjing, I entertained representatives from every major region. It's hard for anyone to guess your head." Zhang Yi snorted, one can never be too careful. Who knows if your subordinates don't have undercover agents from other families? Pa Jigsaw couldn't help but feel a chill down his back when he heard this. The guards and maids around me are the most loyal. Their families have been Pa Jis for generations, and their backgrounds are clean. Zhang Yi said, none of that matters. You still believe in that? Everyone has a price, and once the price is right, they can all be betrayed. That's why I don't believe in that. Pa Jigsaw's speech trailed off, and for a moment, he didn't know what to say. He thought to himself, according to you, doesn't that mean there is no one in the world you can trust? In fact, Pa Jigsaw was very strict in controlling the people around him. In the information age, it was too easy to check whether information was being passed on or whether someone was being contacted secretly. Zhang Yi said, let's talk about the Demon Kingdom. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, I'm still quite interested in that thing, I want to go take a look. Pa Jigsaw was overjoyed. After trying so hard to please Zhang Yi for so long, he had finally received a positive response from the other party. Hope rose in Pa Jigsaw's heart. Perhaps he could live a good life in the southwest region. There might even be a chance to overthrow the Yashi Langtai family and take back the reins of the southwest region. Pa Jigsaw swallowed hard, I will tell you everything you want to know. As long as you can help our Pa Ji family survive here, Zhang Yi said indifferently, that depends on how much benefit I can get from you. I've always done things for money. Pa Jigsaw said, don't worry, as long as you can help me successfully seize the Demon Kingdom's treasure under the Great Snow Mountain, your gains will definitely be much greater than you think. Zhang Yi let out a derisive laugh. Let's put it this way then. The entrance to the Demon Kingdom, which was rumored to be sealed under the Great Snow Mountain, had not been opened for more than 2,000 years. Zhang Yi only felt that it was suspected to be a mysterious underground civilization, and that there might be substances similar to the source of God or the spirit of sacrifice, so he planned to go and take a look. If, by that time, he found that there were no such things, he would just turn around and leave. The two discussed the date. There was less than a month until the start of the Dharma assembly. According to Pa Jigsaw, the relationship between the four powers on the snowy plateau was becoming increasingly sensitive. The Yashi Langtai family is rallying the other two families to surround the Pa Ji family. However, the other two families, the Sheza family and the Laman family, are not so easily used as pawns. What's more, there is a group of unruly people on the snowy plateau who are unwilling to submit to the chief monk of Sangha Temple, and they have been creating chaos on the snowy plateau. Zhang Yi and the others intend to hide their identities on this trip and just go as mercenaries. After all, various forces have been recruiting soldiers recently, and it is not uncommon to see mercenaries frequenting various places. Zhang Yi decided to go a few days later, as he still needed to arrange some things at home. The two agreed on a time and ended the communication. Immediately afterwards, Zhang Yi called everyone in the shelter over and informed them of their upcoming trip to the snowy plateau. After hearing this, everyone's faces revealed expressions of curiosity or anticipation. Snowy plateau? Isn't that in the southwest region? There are countless mysterious legends about that place, and it makes people yearn to go. Yang Xia said with anticipation. Or we could go to Sangha Temple to worship the gods and pray for the end of the Ice Age. Not far away, her cousin Yang Xin Shin said unceremoniously, the snowy region is mysterious, but it is not a peaceful place. Since ancient times, there have been many terrifying legends there. In particular, some of the traditional practices of Tantra are so horrible that you may vomit after seeing them. Zhang Yi shrugged, this trip to the snowy plateau is different from the trip to Xinjiang. We were invited there, and we have a purpose. So far, Zhang Yi has only discussed the matter with Pa Jigsaw in detail with Yang Xin, and no one else knows the details. However, today, Zhang Yi still went over the ins and outs of the matter with everyone. Hearing that it involved such a complicated power struggle, everyone's relaxed expressions faded. So this is a power struggle in the southwest region. But is there really treasure under the Great Snow Mountain? If that's the case, we'll be the first to take advantage of it and be the first to eat the crab, and we might be able to obtain amazing wealth. Shokir calmly analyzed the situation. Zhang Yi nodded. That's what I was thinking. I've been thinking about this for a long time. The end of the world has already arrived, and this world is far more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. If possible, I hope to live carefree here with you all for the rest of my life. But for now, it's clear that we don't yet have safe living conditions. Zhang Yi rubbed the back of his hands and stared intently at everyone. Therefore, you must not slacken your efforts. Work hard to become stronger, and then we will all live well together. Chapter 1249, Journey to the Snowy Region. The journey to the snowy region was set in stone. But few people could change Zhang Yi's mind once he had made a decision. After all, Zhang Yi never made a decision based on a hunch. He might not be the smartest person in the shelter, but he was definitely the most prudent. Therefore, there was no oversight in his arrangements. By the way, this time, we will set off as mercenaries. Non-combat personnel will hide in Muyan's shadow space. Zhang Yi looked at the young girl wearing a black veil in the corner of the living room and said. Muyan nodded. With everyone's help recently, there are now many household items in my shadow space, and it has become a paradise. Spending a long time in there is a bit boring, but otherwise it's great. Zhang Yi began to call out names. The apparent combatants are me, Flower, Liang Yu, Fatty Su, and Uncle Yu. Fatty Su was playing a game with his head down and, upon hearing this, pointed at his own face in surprise. Me? Zhang Yi didn't even bother to respond to him. Zhang Yi had seen Fatty Su's performance in the abyss of the Qinling Mountains the last time they fought, and when he reviewed the footage of their battle afterwards. Once motivated, this Fatty's combat effectiveness was quite good. If he can get rid of his laziness and really figure out how to become stronger, with Zhang Yi's help, it's only a matter of time before he becomes a captain-level mutant. So Zhang Yi ignored Fatty Su's expression of grievance and made arrangements directly. We each need to change our identities and be careful to hide them when we get to the snowy region. The designations will be expressed using simple codes. In the future, my code will be A, Flower is B, Liang Yu is C, Fatty Su is D, and Uncle Yu is E. Fatty Su sighed. This is really cold. Shokir said gently, since we have to hide our identities, we have to do it thoroughly. Otherwise, our identities are still likely to be exposed. After all, nowadays we are very famous in the Huashu Kingdom, and those large forces must have investigated us. She smiled and raised her hands, which were a pair of white, slender jade hands, truly flawless and dexterous like jade. My ability can help you fine-tune your body structure. Although it is not easy to change your body shape, it is very simple to change your appearance. So, Shokir helped the 4 people and the cat in the combat group change their appearances. Just by adjusting the proportions of the facial features and slightly changing the bones, they were able to instantly turn someone into a different face, completely unrecognizable from their former appearance. Zhang Yi took a look at himself in the mirror. He had gone from the determined young man he had been to a cold, skinny man. The coldness of his face gave off a self-contained aura that kept people away. This was very much in line with the mercenary persona Zhang Yi had described. Zhang Yi looked left and right and was quite satisfied with the image. Kir, how long can this look be maintained? Zhang Yi asked. Shokir said, about a month. But it can be renewed when it expires. She said with a smile. Zhang Yi nodded, very good, this will save a lot of trouble. At this time, Fatty Su and the others also changed appearance, and they looked nothing like the people they were before. Even Flower was changed from a black raccoon to a yellow raccoon. This was the easiest to do, just apply some harmless paint to color it. As for the species, it couldn't be changed. After all, if a cat turns into a dog, that's a problem in the field of genetics. Sho Jaime suddenly raised her hand at this point and asked, wait, if we're all leaving, who's going to stay and look after the house? Zhang Yi laughed and said, just leave it to the frog. After they left, the only thing Zhang Yi was most worried about at home was the Earth Centipede farm. the frog is now obsessed with raising the earth centipedes and can't tear itself away from them. It lives and eats with them. Yes, that's right. It literally eats and sleeps with them. When it gets hungry, it grabs 2 of the poorly growing earth centipedes and nibbles on them. It's very content. The problem at home was thus easily solved. However, every time he leaves, Zhang still habitually goes to the 3 bases to take a look and check for any safety hazards. And to test whether these guys have any treachery in their hearts. In fact, the entire Tianhai city is under his watchful eye. Even the control rights of the Tianhai city satellite system of the Huashu Kingdom are in his hands, and it is almost impossible for others to secretly do something to hide it from him. But Zhang still went to check out of habit. However, nothing much has changed here. Life in Tianhai City was so comfortable that, except for the Sky Dragon King's desperate counterattack, the rest of the years were uneventful. This made Zhang feel sad and emotional. He had experienced so many things out there, and he and the people around him had all grown at a terrifying rate. But these guys in the bases around him had each become like beasts kept in a zoo, having lost their wild nature. The leaders of the 3 major bases now had a significant gap in strength from the level of vice captain. Zhang didn't know what else to do, so he could only give them some advice and tell them to be careful. In addition, they should pay attention to the people around them and see if they show any signs of mutation. When he returns, the Earth Centipede farm should be ready for harvest. At that time, he will slowly cultivate a group of outstanding mutants and form the Tianhai City Mutant Defense Force. He can't be expected to do everything himself every day, it would be too embarrassing. There is no need to go into the preparations. In short, Zhang Yi was well prepared and quietly led the people around him to the snowy plateau. The Huashu Kingdom is very large, but Space Shuffle is really fast. In just half an hour, Zhang Yi and his men arrived at the outskirts of the snowy plateau. The southwest region includes parts of Sichuan and Chongqing and the snowy plateau. However, due to the emergence of the Tundra Undertaker in the snowy plateau, it quickly became the dominant force in the entire southwest region. Whoever becomes the master of Tundra will be the supreme ruler of the snowy plateau and the entire southwest region. In order to make the show convincing and not arouse suspicion, Zhang Yi really pretended to be an ordinary mercenary from the outside world, heading towards the snowy region from the Sichuan-Chongqing area. A huge snowmobile was taken out, and 4 people and a cat got on it and started to move along the vast and boundless snow-covered plains. The road into the snowy plateau had long been covered in snow, so there was no road anywhere. Fortunately, they had a satellite map of the southwest region given to them by Pa Jigsaw, so they didn't get lost in this seemingly ice and snow world. Once they entered the snowy plateau, they could see the endless mountains in the distance, stretching out like a huge white dragon lying on the ground. These are the Qinling Mountains. Historically, the Huashu Kingdom was one of the most famous dragon veins, with an influence second only to the Qinling Mountains. In ancient legends, this was the abode of the gods in the heavens, and also a sacred place in the hearts of countless cultivators. Zhang Yi is wearing heavy battle armor, but in fact, what lies beneath is the submerging dragon armor. The lightweight battle armor does not look much different from a high-tech combat suit on the surface, but there is a world of difference in the combat effectiveness they can provide. Even the most advanced combat suit in the region nowadays can hardly withstand the full force of a blow from a captain-level mutant. However, the submerging dragon armor made of E-metal on Zhang Yi's body has more than 30 times the defense of that kind of combat suit. So far, this is the armor with the highest defense and the most superior performance in the world today. The snowmobile was like a silver lion, galloping across the vast, boundless snowfield. Its tracks crushed the ice and snow, leaving 2 delicate sets of teeth marks in their wake. Chapter 1250, The Great Snow Mountain. Zhang Yi sat in the vehicle, chatting with the people around him about the plan after entering the snowy region. They had talked about many things countless times, but they still habitually confirmed them once more to avoid any oversights. After entering the snowy region, the first thing we need to do is confirm whether the so-called treasures of the Demon Kingdom are real. We won't work for free. If there aren't enough benefits, we'll immediately retreat and let them fight among themselves. If the first point is satisfied, then the most important thing we need to do next is to get information on the legendary Lord of the Corpse. When mentioning this, Zhang Yi's brows furrowed slightly, and he became significantly more cautious. The Southwest region is a special area, and it does not have the authority to launch the Reaper of Love. Therefore, Epsilon-level mutants are almost invincible here. Zhang Yi's only concern is the Undertaker, who is said to have been bestowed with divine powers. However, every time he asks, Pa Jigsaw is always evasive. Without sufficient data for comparison, it is impossible to confirm just how strong the Undertaker is. Yang Xin-Shin's voice came over the communication channel. Pa Jigsaw is also on our guard, and I'm afraid he will only give us specific information when we actually reach the Pa Ji family. Zhang Yi nodded. That's true. It's just that this Undertaker is very mysterious, and the so-called heavenly gift adds a lot of mystery to it. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and looked grave. He always respected opponents whose strength he was unsure of and dared not underestimate them in the slightest. On the other hand, Uncle Yu in the back seat laughed heartily as he hugged his thick arms. Why should you fear the so-called heavenly gift? In a sense, aren't we mutants all the people who have received a gift from heaven? Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow on hearing this. That does seem to make some sense. Except that he received a bit more, as if he had been directly filled with it. Sitting in the passenger seat was Liang Yu, fully armed. Next to her sat Long's roar, sheathed in its scabbard. She said indifferently, initiation itself is a Buddhist term. People of Tantra can achieve enlightenment through initiation, so perhaps it is also effective and not strange in terms of supernatural powers. After all, even the inconceivable things like reincarnation cannot be explained in terms of them. Not to mention anything else? Thinking of the miraculous heavenly singer and the reincarnated Undertaker, the group could not help but feel even more awestruck at this mysterious land of the snowy plateau. Only Fatty Sue kept his head down and played games. Zhang Yi couldn't help but give him a cold glare. Fatty Sue, you've been playing games a bit too often lately. Fatty Sue didn't even turn his head. That's right, I used to play on my own, but now I finally have a game partner. Huh. Everyone, including the flowers on Zhang Yi's lap, turned around to look. Fatty Sue felt the strange stares from everyone. Is there something wrong? Zhang Yi looked amused. You mean a partner? It's the end of the world, and there are not many people who can play games online together. Ordinary people don't have the conditions, unless they are a small number of people in each region with special permissions. They have the authority to communicate with other regions over the network. It can't be Liang Yang, can it? Zhang Yi's face was full of confusion. Fatty Sue scratched his head awkwardly, but his hands quickly rubbed back and forth on the screen. Despite his chubby hands, Fatty Sue could rub the screen really fast. Sort of, the others said in disbelief. You knew she was. Well, let's just say she because it sounds really creepy to say he. You knew she was a tomboy, and you just pretended like nothing happened? Fatty Sue explained, it's not easy to find someone you get along with. Not to mention. His face turned red. She often sends me pictures of her in a little skirt. Hey, you know, she's quite pretty. Dang it. Zhang Yi felt goosebumps all over his body. Is a little crossdresser that attractive? He gritted his teeth and looked away angrily, saying in a low voice, if you like her so much, just go to Xinjiang and find her. Fatty Sue sighed, forget it. I think this way of getting along is pretty good. Why do we have to be together in real life? Zhang Yi slapped his forehead. He finally understood now. A fat nerd can marry a paper doll, so it's even more normal to spend time with a young man on the internet and hypnotize yourself a little. But if it really had to be real, he was scared again. Okay, no wonder you're you, Su Chun Lei. Zhang Yi's mouth curled up. As for Fatty Sue, as long as the kid didn't go crazy, betray him for a woman. Or a man, then it didn't matter what Fatty Sue did. Just then, Liang Yu in the passenger seat suddenly opened her eyes wide, looking incredulously ahead. She held up her finger, her voice a little excited, pointing ahead. Look, look! Buddha's light. Everyone's attention shifted away from Fatty Sue and they looked into the distance. On the endless snowfield, their tiny snowmobile was as insignificant as an ant. In the distance, the snow-capped mountains stretched on like sleeping dragons, towering between heaven and earth. And suddenly, a gorgeous, green radiance rose up above those mountains, enveloping the peaks like a sun disk. Zhang Yi's pupils slowly dilated. In his life, he had never seen such a beautiful radiance. With his meager vocabulary, it was difficult to describe the magnificence of this radiance. He only felt that a single glance was enough to make him feel happy, as if all the gloom in his heart had been swept away. The nervousness and worry about entering the snowy region soon dissipated. At the edge of that green radiance, there seemed to be a faint layer of gold, spanning across the snow-capped mountains. It was ethereal, sacred, and carried a hint of emptiness. Zhang Yi had a lot on his mind, but in the end, he swallowed it all back. He didn't believe in a particular religion, but he did believe in the idea that it was better to believe than not to believe. At this moment, it was better to hold on to a trace of awe. No one spoke, and this scene was also seen through shadow space by Xin Shin and the others. Some people put their hands together in worship, some were indifferent, and some were silently appreciating it. The car was driving autonomously, and they didn't need to pay attention to anything. It was only after an unknown period of time that the intelligent system gave him a reminder, which made him come back to his senses. Biological object detected, determined to be human. Zhang Yi immediately asked the system to enlarge the image. The tactical eyepiece lowered, and in front of his eyes, the scene thousands of meters away was quickly zoomed in and in. Then, he saw a scene that he would never forget. It was a cold, snowy day, with a howling wind. The temperature above the snowy plateau was even lower than in Xinjiang, the northern capital. Yet on the long, snowy road, there was a man with long, unkempt hair, wearing only thin cotton trousers, with his upper body bare, his feet exposed, slowly but determinedly walking along the snowy path, bowing his head repeatedly.